Hello, crafty friends. This is Anya General with Ink, Paper, Scissors. Welcome back to my channel. Today, we're diving into a really fun product, Distress Embossing Glaze. If you've never used these before, they're different from your traditional embossing powders. Instead of being opaque, these glazes are completely translucent once melted. That means you can layer them over stamped images, ink blending, or even overlapping colors, and still see everything underneath. They add that beautiful, shiny, enamel-like finish without covering up your work, and the colors themselves are wonderfully bright and vibrant, which makes them pop even more on your projects. In this video, I'll be sharing 3 different techniques you can try with Distress Embossing Glaze, and I think you'll love how versatile they are. The first technique will really highlight the translucency and how perfect it is for projects where colors overlap. For that one, I'll be showcasing some brand new products from Hero Arts, the Very Merry Star Color Layering Stencils and Dies, and the Very Merry Tree Color Layering Stencils and Dies. Then I'll also show you how you can achieve the same look even if you don't have those particular products. That first technique is where we'll spend the most time today, since it really shows off what's unique about these glazes. After that, I'll share 2 additional techniques that are quicker but just as impactful. Before we jump in, I'd love it if you'd hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. It really helps my channel grow and lets me keep bringing you new ideas every week. One of the goals I've set for myself this year is to reach 10,000 subscribers, and every single one of you who subscribes helps me get a step closer to that milestone. So thank you so much for your support. I also want to remind you that I've started a new Facebook group just for all of you. It's a place where we can share cards, swap ideas, and cheer each other on. I'll leave the link down below if you'd like to join us. And as always, I've linked all of the products I'm using in this video in the description box, so if you'd like to try out any of these supplies, you can find them easily. Now, let's get into our first technique. We're going to start by showing how translucent the glaze is and how it allows you to layer colors beautifully. To begin, I'll be working with coffee filters and a sheet of copy paper to catch the excess powder. That way, nothing goes to waste. For ink, I'll be using Versamark, which is a clear, sticky embossing ink, and for application, I recommend a sponge blending tool. A brush doesn't lay down enough ink for this technique, so the sponge really does make a difference. I start by prepping my A2 cardstock panel with an anti-static powder tool. This step is especially important with embossing glaze since the powders are so fine and it keeps them from sticking where you don't want them. Then I place my first layering stencil over the cardstock, holding it in place on my Altenew sticky mat. To apply the Versamark, I tap my sponge blending tool up and down in a stamping motion rather than rubbing it across the surface. This way, I get a much stronger layer of Versamark ink, and it's going to hold onto the glaze beautifully. Once the Versamark is in place, I sprinkle Salty Ocean embossing glaze over the stenciled areas, making sure everything is evenly coated. I tap off the excess, return the remaining powder back into the jar, and then heat set my panel. This is where the magic really starts to happen. The powder melts into this gorgeous, translucent shine. I also keep a Swiffer cloth handy to wipe away any stray embossing powder from my desk. After that, I rub the anti-static powder over my panel again, and then I line up the second stencil. Then I bring in Wilted Violet Embossing Glaze. When it melts over the salty ocean, the two shades overlap so beautifully, creating this luminous blend that almost looks like stained glass. I repeat this process a second time to intensify the color and get an even richer tone of wilted violet on my card panel. Look at that finish. The glaze gives it such a beautiful glossy look, and the colors really pop. This is exactly why I love embossing glaze. The way the shine catches the light makes the colors come alive. Now let's repeat this technique but step it up a notch. This time I'm working with the Very Merry Tree color layering stencils, and instead of just two shades, I'm pulling out a whole rainbow of colors. Just like before, I start by prepping my cardstock panel with anti-static powder, making sure I've got a nice clean surface so the embossing glaze only sticks where I want it. I lay the first stencil down on my Altenew sticky mat to hold it in place, and then using my sponge blending tool, I tap on the Versamark ink in that same stamping motion I used earlier. This really makes sure the ink is pushed through the stencil and gives the powder something strong to cling to. For the first layer of color, I sprinkle Wilted Violet embossing glaze over part of the stencil, and then I move into Broken China and Twisted Citron on the other areas. I make sure each section is fully covered, tap off the extra powder, and pour it right back into the jar before heat setting the panel. The second that glaze melts, you can already see this gorgeous, shiny finish starting to build. And the colors are so bold and bright. But I don't stop there. For the second stencil layer, I go right back in with my anti-static powder and another round of Versamark ink. This time I bring in picked raspberry, salty ocean, and candied apple, sprinkling each color over different areas of the stencil. I make sure they're fully covered, tap off the extra, return the powder to the jars, and heat set. And every time that glaze melts, the rainbow effect just gets more and more vibrant. It really does look like stained glass coming to life. Next, I move on to the third stencil layer, where I switch to Wild Honey and Kitsch Flamingo. These two bring such a fun pop of warmth. Again, I repeat the same process of inking, glazing, and heat setting, and the panel just keeps getting more and more exciting with every step. Finally, for the fourth and last stencil layer, I use cracked pistachio. It's the perfect finishing touch. It ties the rainbow together and gives just the right amount of contrast against all the other bright, shiny colors. Once this layer is heat set, you can really see how all 4 layers of the stencil come together into one gorgeous, colorful design. Now, let's take this technique and do a fun variation without stencils. Today I'm using mint tape, and because my tape is about 1 inch wide, I fold over roughly 1/4 of it to create narrower strips. This makes it easier to control where the embossing glaze will go. I carefully space the strips evenly across my A2 panel so everything is lined up nicely. Next, I add Versamark ink directly over the panel and start applying one color of embossing glaze at a time. I begin with Kitsch Flamingo, then move on to picked raspberry, broken china, and cracked pistachio. Once all the strips are fully covered in powder, I heat set them. The colors are already so vibrant and shiny at this point, and the effect is starting to look really interesting. Now I bring in the mint tape again to cover the strips that have already been heat embossed, but I leave a little bit of the previous color showing at the edges. This is what allows the colors to overlap beautifully, creating soft transitions and depth. For this overlapping section, I'm using Saltwater Taffy, Wilted Violet, Salty Ocean, Twisted Citron, and Candied Apple. Each time I heat set a layer, the overlapping colors blend subtly while still keeping their brightness. It's such a fun and satisfying effect to watch come to life. Now let's move on to the second technique. I'm using the cling stamp of the month called In the Valley, and I carefully place it centered over my A2 panel in my MISTI. I stamp the background image with VersaFine Clear Morning Mist ink, though really any ink works here. Once I get a solid impression, I take the panel out of my MISTI and lay it on my glass mat to prep for the embossing glaze. Next, I use my Versamark ink pad and apply it directly over the A2 panel. This is called the direct-to-paper technique. I make sure to cover the panel thoroughly with Versamark, as this will hold the embossing glaze in place beautifully. Then it's time to sprinkle on the glaze. I start with Salty Ocean, adding just a little bit as I don't need much, and I won't be able to put it back into the jar once it's mixed with other colors. Next, I add Wilted Violet and then Speckled Egg. I gently move the powders around to make sure the entire panel is evenly coated. Once everything is in place, I heat set the panel and watch as the powders melt into this gorgeous translucent stained glass effect. The best part is that you can still see the lovely script from the background stamp underneath, which adds so much depth and visual interest to the piece. Our last technique is called the resist technique, and it's a great way to make your stars really pop. For this technique, I'm using the Hero Arts Color Layering Scattered Stars stencils. I start by adding anti-static powder to my A2 panel. This step is really important to make sure the embossing glaze only sticks where I want it. Then I place the first layer stencil over my panel and use my foam blending tool to gently tap Versamark ink over the stars. Next, I sprinkle Wild Honey embossing glaze over the Versamark areas and heat set it. You'll notice how the stars start to shine and really stand out. I then repeat this process with the second and third layer stencils, building up the embossed design layer by layer. Once all 3 layers are complete, I start ink blending Faded Jeans Distress Oxide over the entire panel. My video broke off at this point, and I didn't have time to refilm it, but I'll show you the completed card so you can see exactly what I did. I also added a little wilted violet over the panel to give it extra depth. To make the stars really pop, I took a soft cloth and wiped over them. This removes any excess ink from the embossed areas and brightens them up to a beautiful yellow-orange glow. I then trimmed my panel down to 4 inches by 5¼ inches and die cut a Christmas tree and bow to layer on top. Finally, I added a sentiment and my card was complete. And here are the finished cards. I ended up creating 7 cards in total. I didn't walk you through each one step by step since the process was pretty straightforward and the video would have gotten way too long, but you can absolutely pause and take a closer look here. If you have any questions about how I made them, just drop me a comment below. I always love helping out and chatting with you. I'd love to hear which of the techniques you liked best today and if you've tried Distress Embossing Glaze before. It's such a unique product, and I think once you see how it works, you'll start finding lots of ways to incorporate it into your own projects. If you haven't already, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss my future videos. And if you found this helpful, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps my channel grow. You'll also find a full supply list linked in the description box below if you'd like to shop any of the products I used today. And finally, don't forget to check out my Facebook group. It's a growing community of crafters where we share cards, inspiration, and encouragement. I'd love for you to join us. Thanks so much for spending this time with me today. I hope you're leaving with some new ideas and excitement to try Distress Embossing Glaze in your own crafting. Until next time, happy crafting!